Welcome to Hartford Public Access. We are the Whaler Guys, Pete and Jerry. We're here for another episode of the Whaler Guys at Hartford Public Access here on Sargent Street in Hartford in the capital city. We have it's been a busy week. You know, UConn, you were fortunate enough to go to the home game.
Yep.
And they lost 4-0.
No, well, they lost 4-0 in Providence. This is UConn went into Providence. Providence, of course, won the whole thing last year, so it was a big matchup for them. UConn's 4-10-4 right now, so pretty bad. I'm sorry, 4-14-4. So they're again 10 games under 500. They had the home-on-home series with Providence, so they lost 4-0 to Providence on Friday night. But the good news was Rob Nichols, he's pretty much the all-star UConn goalie.
Oh,
he pretty much holds the whole thing together.
Yep.
He came back Friday night, even though they lost 4-0, and then Saturday at the XL, we got a great crowd, 6,844.
That's awesome.
Which actually struck up, we can tell you here, in terms of Hockey East games this year, UConn has the third, fourth, and sixth largest crowds in Hockey East this year. That last game, the game against Providence Saturday night, is the fourth largest crowd in Hockey East this year. So
that's awesome.
UConn has 3 of the top 10. Going forward, it looks like if they want to make a home playoff game, which would be fantastic.
Oh, absolutely. One more game at home.
If they could win, get 5 out of the 8 next points that they face. So they have 2 games against Northeastern, and then they have 2 games against New Hampshire the following weekend, and then that's it.
That's it.
So they're definitely going to get in the playoffs. But the thing is, can they win 1 or 2 of these next 4 games and get possibly into that 8th spot in the conference?
Yeah,
and get
hopefully so. I mean, you have to give the fans credit for coming out and like you said, supporting a team that's 4-14. 6,800 is a great crowd.
Sure.
Are you kidding me?
Don't forget, this is when it was like minus 400 degrees. I mean, it was so cold. It was like, hey, we're at the Whale Bowl, but it's indoors.
It was probably warm inside compared to outside.
We went inside to warm up. During that, it was so cold.
Which
outside.
speaks volumes for Mike Freemuth and CRDA putting that place together.
Yeah, I know. And it's so funny because you think that with that weather like that people wouldn't show up. But they got a good crowd for Saturday night, 68-44.
That's great.
And they're doing well this year. Actually, they're averaging, over. Let's see. So they have 15 games in Hartford this year, and I think we got 2 left. So they've gone through 13 games, and they're averaging just over. Let's see. They pulled in 45,620 people. For 8 dates, and those are the in-conference home games.
Oh, wow.
So just for the in-conference home games, they're averaging 5,700. And then the Husky totals for this season equals 66,629 for 13 dates. And they're averaging 5,125 people per game, and that's 3rd among Hockey East teams in the conference. So when people tell you that nobody goes to the XL Center, and probably the teams in front of them are probably Lowell, UMass, and maybe BC or BU, one of those teams. But the point is, here we are. The team's still, I hate to say this, it sounds mean, but they stink.
Well, they're having a rough.
But they're drawing.
They are, and that's so important when, especially like we went over last time with the remodel. Talked about so much with people who are naysaying the remodel of the XL Center. This is just another reason to put that money into the XL Center, because look at the amount of people coming to a team that isn't very good this year and not a powerhouse, but powerhouse in the attendance rankings versus the hockey rankings, and it's still great hockey. I mean, they really play their heart and soul.
The game Saturday night, they just they just don't have the offense. And Providence is they were a very good team, back checking, forechecking. And UConn had a moment there where they scored with 1 minute and 5 seconds. It was Pauly, who was the leading scorer one of the leading scorers last year. He scored with about 1 minute and 5 seconds left, and then for that last minute, there was that glimmer of hope. There were bees around the nest. There were hornets, but it wasn't enough time.
Hornets.
So hornets nest. But they did get shellacked at Providence the night before. So. I have to be fair. We were joking how the team's not that great but they've had a lot of injuries this year.
They have.
And college is different than any other level of sports because they're not calling Elmira to call up defensemen. They don't have. There's no farm club to go to.
I tell you,
you take your lumps and your licks and you move on the season.
And you can see, there's nights, and we've been at the games where they just look tired. And these are college kids. And again, they're doing their best out there. They're putting their best foot forward. We saw Brent Thompson the other night watching this kid play during the All-Star break. It's nice to see a host of fans. And again, the excitement is is nothing that I want to miss.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I'll be at the game Friday night.
Right, right.
But it's a lot of fun. And, you know, talking about attendance numbers, we have information here.
This would be interesting.
And we know how much everyone loves how Peter Carmanos misstates everything. But we're not going to, because this comes from NHL.com. The Carolina Hurricanes are 30th.
30th.
In
How many
attendance.
teams in the NHL?
It says 30.
Oh,
so
okay.
I would say they're last.
I was surprised. I thought they might come 31st out of 30.
You know, the people that love the Carolina Hurricanes, good for you. You might want to be one of the 11,000 at average, the average seating at
11,000.
11,000. I think the Whalers drew more than them.
Yeah.
In their last few years here in Hartford.
They did for you know, probably the teams were comparable. Well, you know what? Where Carolina? How is their standings report? Where they're not making the playoffs, obviously.
Right. The standings. Yes, we do have the standings, and currently in the Eastern Division, they are third from the bottom.
Yep.
And they have a total of 57 points, and this was as of last week. So
Yeah.
they have won a couple. So, you know, we have to give them credit where credit's due.
Well, I think they have a shot. In other words, if they were to go on a good run, you know, to at least be in playoff contention in the bottom half.
Yep.
And we understand it. We'll be fair about this. Suppose you know, they were leading the division, they probably wouldn't be averaging 11-5.
And the other thing is, you have to remember, and we brought this up, I think, last week. You know, everyone, the naysayers are saying, well, Carolina's getting a new revamped building. Well, yeah, think about this. How about NC State is getting a revamped building, and the secondary tenant is the NHL in that building? Yeah. So let's be completely honest. I think they're building it for basketball, and oh, by the way, Carolina Hurricanes play here on the other nights.
Oh, absolutely. The Wolfpack in North Carolina is the big dog.
Sure.
Just like NASCAR. You know, I remember going to Greenville, seeing the first Whaler-Cane game in North Carolina, and you know, the first thing they had was you know, a NASCAR car right there, and you know, that's where everybody was. Nobody was watching the new team that was warming up, but you know, that's just the way it is. So hockey is just not going to be a forefront. Now, you could say that here in Connecticut, people are probably going to say that college basketball draws more than hockey. We've seen that with UConn. The UConn men's outdraws the Wolfpack. They outdraw UConn hockey. But this is definitely, I mean, hockey's in the top 3 sports.
And for us, you know, when you look at these numbers, these are numbers Hartford can sustain.
Right.
You know, there's many of the naysayers out there that sit there and say, oh, we can't support a major league team. Well, we did support a major league team, and from these numbers, we supported them better than Carolina at this stage of the game.
Yeah.
I will say, to be fair, because I am like that, ticket prices were a lot different back then than they are today.
Right, and back then, you know, that's the difference too. We always talk about this. There's turnstile, and then there's today's little fluff and you know,
and
we've
everyone's
sold
done
many
it.
seats, but not that many people came into the building. You've seen that. If you go to I think it's empty seats on pics on Twitter. They have, you know, they show arenas, and you know, tonight's tennis 12-6, and you look, and then this, you know, everybody has a row. Right,
yeah. So I don't know. I'm going with the NHL numbers because I would think they're doing the right thing and putting the right numbers in there.
Yeah.
Leading the league is Chicago, Stanley Cup champions.
Surprise.
They're averaging, for the first half of the season, 21,760.
Yeah, Hartford's probably not going to make that number.
No.
Probably not going to make that number.
We don't have a big enough building.
Well, you don't have a big enough building, and we don't have enough Stanley Cups to accommodate that.
Second is Montreal. Yay, rah-rah.
Yay.
21,288.
Wow.
So they're not far behind.
No.
And, of course, Detroit, Toronto, and then Boston comes in 5th at 19,278. And I think that building holds 20,000.
Yeah.
And then you get down, the New York Rangers come in 17th.
Wow.
At 18,000, yes. I would think they would be higher up being in the position they're in.
Yeah, but you know what? They are selling out 99% of their buildings.
Yes,
so
they are.
It's kind of like a
Washington, who's in first place, they're 11th with 18,509.
They're having a heck of a year, too.
They are. They had a big win the other night. Boston had a big win last night, 2-1 in overtime over Columbus.
Oh, yeah?
Yep. I knew it would make you happy. I like to see your face when I say that.
Yeah.
The Rangers have a big game tonight against Joel Quenneville and Kevin Dineen.
That's right.
At Madison Square Garden. It's Rivalry Wednesday.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you're at home, and you're not going to hear this because it'll be next week, turn on NBC Sports Network to watch that one.
Yeah, and if you look, it's kind of interesting. You know, over this time period when the last year when we were trying to see what's going to happen at the XL Center, we'd heard maybe the NHL had stopped in. We heard that some teams had stopped in, and you look at the last 4 teams on this list, and you have Columbus, New York Islanders, Arizona,
and Carolina.
And then 2 spots up from there
is Florida. And Florida, I think the jump in Florida's attendance is because they're playing good hockey.
They are.
They're playing very good hockey.
Yes.
They're one of the hottest teams in the NHL over the long span there.
And that's good. I mean, if it's going to work, but it's got to sustain. And they're still, even with that, they're 25th out of the 30 teams.
Yeah, and they're averaging, on here, it's 14,000, where last year they were averaging about 11,000.
Yeah, it was a little rough.
Where Carolina is. So, again, I'm taking it for what it's worth. The NHL hopefully is reporting the right numbers.
Yeah.
We wouldn't want to say they were misleading anybody.
Oh, yeah. Because when you think about how much, these also they all have good percentages of the buildings sold. But at the same time, like you said, Hartford was averaging 14,600 the final year, and that would put them on this list. It would put them right behind Florida, I think. So, right behind New Jersey. So, that's comparing numbers from long ago.
Sure.
Now, if we add the way
but if you look at that number with New Jersey, they have a bigger facility than us.
Yeah, we
only have 15,000.
Yeah.
So at 14,000. We sold out 3/4 of the building.
Oh no, we had 94% filled. The XL Center was. Now that was different because Carmanos didn't count the suites and then that was all because the city didn't had control of those and he didn't. And that was a bitter sticking point. But you're right. This next XL is supposed to be 18 to 19,000 seats.
Yep.
That would put us into these categories with these buildings, and that's why the building becomes modern and is an NHL ready arena. In Hartford.
And you remember,
if it happens.
Remember a couple of years ago when they were talking about the NHL possibly coming back to Hartford, they said, well, you have to have AHL numbers up, AHL numbers up. Yeah. Well, I find it very amusing that we don't have the AHL numbers up, which I'm still kind of irritated about, but we have UConn numbers that are way up.
Yeah.
You've added another level of hockey to Hartford, and they've, like you said, they're averaging 5,700 per game this year. Last year was a little higher.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, there's 500 more season ticket holders this year than there was last year.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's another thing. When UConn, no one could show up, and they have around 3,000 season tickets, we believe. We don't know that for a solid number. But you brought up another good point, about the games this year, and the attendance is down a little bit, but it's not, tremendously down. But don't forget, this year, they had 6 Tuesday night games. That's unheard of in the AHL. The Wolfpack don't even go near Tuesday. They skip right to Wednesday games.
And the other thing is we should check with Anderson Analytics to see what those numbers were for Tuesday night games. Because when you look at those, if those are bigger numbers, that speaks volumes for midweek games where traditionally people don't come out of the house.
Right.
It's like going to the mall on Monday night. Nobody's there.
Yeah, I can tell you those Tuesday night games, because we kept a good eye on them, nothing less than 3,600, and it was nothing more than probably 4,200.
Yeah.
But when you compare that to the AHL, and it's not a Wolfpack thing. You could tell me in Worcester, you could put me anywhere. On a Tuesday night, you're talking 17 to 2,200 for the AHL.
Yeah.
So you're getting that season ticket holder base return, and the AHL numbers in Hartford are up. As for 2 reasons, I believe. One is for UConn, because I think UConn helps bring in that. But also is the renovations. The $33 million they put into the XL Center was a 10% kick-in to hold the spit and glue to keep everything working. And it has turned the building around. It's still, losing money, but it's turned it around to the point where it's not hemorrhaging as much as it was.
Well, what I've noticed, and obviously being at the game, the number one thing you notice is the fan bar.
Yeah,
and it's loaded every night. Yeah. And I'd love to get the numbers from CRDA to see how much of an increase in their sales of beverages and whatever's in there, just to see how things are going. Michael Freeman said they were 50% over what they expected it to be. So it was a great addition. It's a great look. It looks modern.
Yeah.
Even though if you go downstairs, you're like, But it's one of those things where I think all these things together, Wolfpack, UConn, it's justifying putting the investment for the future. And that's what all these politicians have to jointly come together and say, let's give the money to the XL Center to maintain a vibrant downtown.
Yeah, and I think, we did briefly talk about it in the last show, but Even when the building sells out now, there's problems with the concourse in terms of the crowdness. The lines from the vending areas line up and they cut off the concourse access. They had, and this is almost embarrassing, but in a way, it's like you have to show people how bad the XL Center. They had porta potties on the Church and Ann Street corner of the mezzanine level there
for the Springsteen concert.
For the Springsteen concert. So if you had to go to the bathroom, the lines were so long. There's a porta potty outside when it's negative 14 degrees.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine what that was like.
Woo!
Yeah. So anyway, but that just goes to show you, you may look at that and think like, what a dump. How horrible is that? But it does bring it to a visual like, hey, this building needs work. It needs help.
They bring porta potties in for critical incidents and natural disasters.
Yes.
Are we saying that the XL Center is a natural disaster?
Well, I think we're
almost there.
There were some natural disasters last night. The people ate a lot of barbecue. So you got to have your porta potties ready because, if you go, if you go DEFCON 3 on anything, you just.
Are you speaking from experience?
I didn't want to come out and say it, but I do have a certificate. I am certified. So.
You're a hazmat.
Yeah, right. But but going back to the building, the whole reason we talk about this is because that building was really built for 10,508 people. That's what it was, in the WHA days. When the roof collapsed, they said, "Hey, we can bump it up." But it's really not a building built for 15,000 people. It's built for 10.
Or 19,000.
Yeah, or concourse-wise. But getting a second concourse on the building, that's all the important range.
Exactly.
And we're waiting. We're in a holding pattern.
We're in a holding pattern, especially with the budget and what the governor has released of how he's going to try to mitigate the problem. Which makes all of us a little nervous. But, it is what it is. We have to deal with it. And, we're not being critical of it. It's this day and age of dealing budgets. Yeah. You brought up the WHA. It's a great segue into, we have some player profiles that, I was busy at home putting these together. I hope it's a great trip down memory lane. When I went to see the WHA and the New England Whalers when I was younger, my favorite player, before I knew better, was the goalie, and his name was Krister Abrahamsson. His brother, Tommy Abrahamsson, also played for the Whalers, the New England Whalers. And just a little background, Krister Abrahamsson, wearing number 1 for the New England Whalers, was one of the first Europeans to play with the Whalers, and his twin brother, defenseman Tommy Abrahamsson. That would have been great. What if Tommy's out there and he give up a goal and it's the defenseman? It could be a domestic. Krister Abrahamsson posted a 3.58 goals against average in 102 games with the New England Whalers. Wow. And with his last year being 76-77, which was the year they played the Russians, he then also went on to play for, he was a member of the Swedish Olympic hockey team in 1972. So a little background on some of the netminders back in the day was Cap Rader, Al Smith. Al Smith was like the best goalie that the Whalers ever had. Yeah. Cap Rader stood on his head. And then we get into the captain of the New England Whalers, Rick Lee. And I kind of went with, as we go through this, you'll see that I went with the numbers that are retired in the XL Center, or the Civic Center, as we like to say, us old-timers.
Veterans Memorial Coliseum.
There you go. Number 2 was Rick Lee. He was the big C for both the New England Whalers of the World Hockey Association, and then played for the Hartford Whalers. 478 WHA games, 35 goals, 210 assists, and 245 penalty minutes. He was a scrapper.
Oh, yeah.
Well, like you can see his face. He's been through hell.
One of those funny things, we had Mike Visor on this show. We had called him. He was down in Louisiana, and at the time we thought Rick Lee, he was a coach. He was the captain of the Whalers, a coach for the Whalers, and then turned that C and took it off of Ron Francis.
Yeah.
And boy, we for years were like, how could he do that? What a guy! And then we had Mike Visor on, and he said, hey, that wasn't his fault.
Yeah.
And he said there was no guy that stood in front of the net. They cleared the puck out and pushed guys out. Rick Lee was a monster in front of the net. And I have a whole new respect for him. I didn't get to see him play. I was a little bit young. I probably saw him play, but I'm too young to remember. But you probably saw him, actually. You remember him playing a little bit. I do remember on the ice, skating around. I don't remember specific plays. Right. But watching some of the highlights that you can see on YouTube, WHA Hockey has their own channel. Mark Wallon puts out a lot of WHA stuff. And to watch the WHA games is so much fun because there's no advertisements on the boards. Right.
There's nothing on the ice except the 2 whales, which is just fine. Yeah. And on one of the videos I was watching against the Soviets, when they scored the goal, I swear they piped in the Brass Bonanza louder. It was hilarious because, of course, we know the Brass Bonanza. We all live by it. And to listen to it on the WHA video, it just, boom, comes right out. And I believe that game was actually televised by WVIT 30.
Wow.
And that's back, you know, when WVIT was just a local channel.
Yeah.
Now it still is, but it's really supported by Comcast.
Oh, yeah.
And it's great. And, you know, just Rick Lee retired after the 80-81 season due to a knee injury that he actually injured during a practice before one of the games.
Wow.
And then it was, he went on to coaching with several teams. He became the 12th head coach of the Vancouver Canucks history on August 10th, 1994. And 121 regular season games as head coach, the Canucks posted a 47, 48, and 26 record.
That's right, I forgot he
So we
coached.
can see that that was not one of his strengths.
No, and you know, it's funny, I was looking at you, 478 WHA games, and then he has 300 NHL games. You know, it'd be interesting to see who holds the record for most WHA games and NHL games played, because it has to be one of those guys that crossed over.
Sure.
And he had to be young in the WHA. Maybe it's Gretzky.
You know, you bring up the WHA days, and when we were at the Jeff Sanderson night, when the Wolfpack brought Jeff Sanderson in, we were talking to one of the scouts from the St. Louis Blues, and apparently Larry Plow was trying to get to that game to be one of the Whalers in the audience that night, but his schedule changed. He's a very busy guy, being the GM of the St. Louis Blues. But he had told the scout that we spoke to, Nick, his days in Hartford and how much he enjoyed it, and he really thought the fans were just A+ fans. So it was nice to hear that from a guy who's now climbed that ladder all the way to being you know, a front office guy with a National Hockey League team.
There's a lot of things that Whalers can do. Like last Sunday, there was a 3 o'clock game. They played the Rochester Americans. There's Randy Cunneyworth right there behind the bench. You know, and he was the guy who gave a tribute on Sanderson night. Not Sanderson night. Sorry, it was UConn Whaler night.
Yes.
He gave a little tribute. So he was in town on Sunday, and you know, apparently he was enjoying remembering his Hartford days.
And a friend of mine met him at one of the local hotels that I either was staying over, or he went over there for a beverage after the game and sat down and had a couple drinks with him, and he said he was just a down-to-earth guy. And again, that speaks volumes of the Whalers that played here in Hartford. They were just down-to-earth people and really fit really well into the community.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you know, we beat that like a drum. You know, the community here was different, only from the standpoint that its smallness helped it. You know, make it more cohesive. People knew each other. You know, the Booster Club still has people on their Facebook page, and they still talk to the Whalers.
Sure.
They're still connected. And you know, we always talk about hockey guys they're nicer, they're friendlier.
You know, it's like your neighbor. I mean, we talked to Mike Visor quite a bit. Sylvain Cote, who we've had on the show via the telephone. And we're going to try to get some other Whalers on here as time permits. We try to get a hold of them. They're busy schedules.
Sure.
I got a friend of mine who said he's going to try to get Jordy Douglas, who played for the Whalers. He wore number 11. So we're going to try to get Jordy Douglas on here. That could be a long-distance call because I think he's in Winnipeg.
Yeah, probably.
So we'll have a time difference and use our minutes up on our big budget we have here at Hartford Public Access. So, you know, we are enjoying this. It's been a blast. We had a meeting with iHeartRadio. If you'd like to send us a message on Facebook, tell us what you think. You think we should do a radio show? I know we have faces for radio, so don't throw that in there. But it was a nice conversation that someone just came out and thought the Whaler guys should do a weekend radio show.
Yeah, there's we gotten a lot of help from guys who are just hockey fans. You know, and they like what we're doing, and we're going to keep doing it because we're enjoying it. And like I said, the stuff that happened in Hartford was important. It's important to remember that, especially now with this building being on almost like life support, and you get the first little bit of brain activity because you put $33 million into it, and now everyone's going, "Oh, let's pull the plug." I'm like, no, you had a positive result.
Right.
You should expand on that.
And the other thing is, at some point, because we're the Whaler guys and you are the brigade, we're going to ask you guys to start writing some emails to Governor Malloy and his office to start pushing them to start really thinking about this XL Center renovation. He has to know that we're all behind the renovation of this because of UConn hockey, because of the Wolfpack. We have a hockey state here. Everyone said it. Some of our guests have even said it, whether it's here, whether it's Fairfield, whether it's Quinnipiac, Yale. I mean, this is a hockey state. We have disposable income that are going to support a Major League Hockey team. We did it. We did well doing it. It was not our fault the team was taken away from us. Someone bought the team, they moved it, they thought it would be a better business interest somewhere else, but we can support it. So it's important that we keep that Excel Center on the forefront and keep those politicians going. So that's all the time we have for tonight, and we're going to be back again next week. That is a threat. And we will check you next time on the Whaler Guys. Remember, we're one nation under green. We're the Whaler Guys, and you're the brigade. Have a great night.